few weeks ago, we talked with UNL Extension agronomist Roger Elmore to learn why early soybean planting can boost yield. This week, we talked with UNL Extension educator in climate variability Tapan Pathak about why planting early might also provide climatological benefits. Tapan looked at historical precipitation data from 1981 to 2010 at York, Meade, and Clay Center and found in a given year, May provided the most rainfall, followed by June. By applying this information and evapotranspiration data, he tried to determine if farmers could gain an edge by putting soybeans in the ground sooner. He used a medium variety soybean and defined early planting as April 24th and late planting as May 27th. As you'll hear, by looking at numbers from 2008 to 2013, farmers who entered the field early could have had an advantage.
In general, for this medium variety for soybean, our total ET requirement for soybean, we kind of had it between 15 to 20 inches for across the whole growing season. So the way we determine the growing season is at the time it reaches certain GTDs, it'll consider from the planting till it reaches those values. And so that varies from 15 to 20 depending on the year. So some of the years, for example, 2012, where we had very little precipitation, but we also had higher radiation, higher temperatures during the growing season. And as you can see in the data, is that for 2012 we have a very high ET because of that reason. So it kind of varies between year to year.
What would be the difference between early and late? If it's 15 to 20, right? So what would be the difference between planting early and late in terms of what the ET would differ?
Oh, so on an average, the ET difference from early versus late would be around 1 or 2 inches difference. And the other thing that might be of to notice is when you look at this ET, has two variables, evaporation and transpiration. So for example, when you're planting early, you're trying to minimize the evaporation part of the equation, and you're adding more in the transpiration. So even if you have that difference in ET, you're actually adding more of a transpiration part in the early planting dates, and that the results and data shows. And I was following with Jim Spatch, who is the soybean expert, and he mentioned that transpiration, if you're adding more that part, it directly relates to more yield. And so that's another aspect to take into consideration.
In precipitation, how much could it vary between early and late?
Yeah, and then when we compared those early versus late in terms of precipitation, total difference on an average was for 3 locations was between 2 inches to 3 inches. And some years, for example, 2012, if we had planted early, there was some moisture when we could have accumulated during the early part, which is late April, early May, and there was a difference of 3 to 4 inches on those years. So, but on an average, it was 2 to 3 inches more precipitation if we had planted early.
As you write, this obviously isn't necessarily a recommendation, but obviously just taken from the data of what could happen. And one of the considerations to note is that it would depend on what you had in your soil at the time of planting.
Okay.
Right.
In terms of, so yeah, I mean, so in terms of when we started planting, if it is 100% recharge, if soil moisture is 100% recharge, maybe there might not be a difference when you have planted early versus late. But then again, as I mentioned, the difference might be in terms of adding the transpiration component. And even if you had early versus late, if there is no difference in moistures, but there will be difference in terms of total ET. So that's and the other thing is when you had planted early, you have water use efficiency. You sort of have more water use efficiency if you had planted early because of the the early planted have less of a water deficit, vapor water deficit, and so you are kind of having more less water efflux, so taking water out per unit of carbon dioxide influx. So that's another benefit of early planting.
Tapan says some of his other climatological work around soybeans includes studying how soil temperatures are warming up faster than in the past and looking at growing degree days of early planted versus late planted soybeans to determine if producers can use longer season varieties, which could result in higher yields.